Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of That's So Matthew. Today, I am so excited to be talking about a little bit of a different movie on the podcast with an amazing guest. So, before we get into our topic, Bob, do you want to say hi and tell us where you're from and
Well,
introduce yourself to the new
well,
listeners?
first of all, I feel like I'm just stuck in your closet because I'm always here. But hi, I'm DJ Bob Runkle, host of the DJ Bob Show, a pop culture podcast highlighting pop culture past and present, and just spreading the gift of people, their art, and what they do. So I'm happy to be here.
Yes, and obviously, everyone who is a regular listener on the podcast already knows Bob from some of our other amazing episodes.
Yeah, that's why I said I feel like I am always here.
Yeah, but today, I think, is an even more special episode for, I think, both of us with this movie. So, Bob, you are very, very passionate about this topic. So if you want to introduce what we'll be talking about today.
So, we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite films. And when I say it's my favorite film, it's not something that I just watch passively. Like, whenever I'm upset and family members hear the movie, they're like, oh, he's going through something. And this movie, The Perky Being Wallflower, that we're going to discuss today, came out in 2012. I discovered it in 2013 when I was going through a real rough patch, and honestly, it's the reason why I'm still here talking to you.
Yeah. Well, I am very excited. And also, I think that if you guys didn't listen to the content warning at the beginning of this episode, this is another reiteration of that, because this movie, I was surprisingly not expecting it to cover topics like what it did. I'm not gonna lie, it was not what I was expecting at all when you first introduced this movie to me.
I did warn you though. I was like, hey, this is a little bit different.
You did warn me, and I still was like, oh, but I still enjoyed it, and I think that it's something that I'm very excited to talk about, and it's also based off of a book, which now I want to read the book.
Okay, so that's interesting because the author of the book directed the movie and wrote the screenplay.
Well, that's good though, because I personally
he's all over this.
Prefer when the author is very involved in the movie adaptations. So maybe it'll be just as good.
Yeah, but read the book too. There are a couple added components that aren't showcased here, but it's a good companion piece to this film.
Yeah, I am very excited, and I will definitely be checking out that book. But honestly, let's get right into it with, starting at the top with our cast breakdown, because we've got some big names in this movie.
Yeah, and this week before, some of them were super big.
Yeah. So. I feel like there were several times I was watching this and I was like, oh my gosh, this was the beginning for them. This is one of the first things that they did. And even there's people who this wasn't their beginning. This was just an extension onto their career. So starting off with Logan Lerman, who plays Charlie, who people may recognize from the Percy Jackson movies. That was the first thing I thought of when I saw him.
This was my first exposure to him, and then I saw Percy Jackson after.
I don't know which ones came out first, actually, to be honest with you.
I think Percy Jackson came out first.
Oh, yeah. Percy Jackson was first in 2010. This was 2012. And then the second one, Percy Jackson, came out in 2013. So Logan, Charlie, his character's name is Charlie, but Logan is the actor's name. Charlie, I felt a connection with him.
Yeah. Yep. And the thing about Charlie that I just want to bring up that will resonate with the both of us is I love that he's a creative person with his own issues and insecurities, and but he's still like he's not afraid to say I'm not doing good today, like because most people are so like when they're a creative person and they want to please people, they just put on a brave face. He never does that.
Yeah, I think that that was one of the parts of this movie that made it like this emotional. I don't want to say it made me an emotional wreck. I did kind of like there were moments where I did feel like very teared up, but not to the point where I was like gonna sob. But it was just more of like this emotional connection where you're right. He's very creative. Like I feel like I saw like parts of my personality and his personality, and that he wasn't like one of those people who would just go on about his day. Like lying to others about how he was feeling. Like if he wasn't feeling well, he made it known and he wasn't like afraid to kind of be vulnerable, which is like this whole movie is very vulnerable, I would say. And he also doesn't have a lot of friends, which obviously is something that like is sad. Uh
But yeah, well, there's honestly there's a sort of a spoiler, and he he has he he had a best friend, but well, we all know what happened. Um, if you remember in the beginning of the film, he kind of references that he lost his best friend the summer before,
yeah, there
and
was a lot of like little things that like I even after watching this the first time like feel like I need to go back and pick
yeah,
up on the little pieces.
and also there's a lot of visual things that you'll see too. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah, and he also is only a freshman in like the beginning of this movie, which
yeah.
is so surprising to me because he feels like such well, I hate like using the phrase old soul, but like that's kind of what I get from him. He doesn't fit like the part of like a freshman in high school.
He doesn't, but he is, and it when I saw this movie for the first time, I saw it because it's one of those rare things where now I connected with him from that moment. It was weird, and that can never happen since.
I think I did just cut out, but I think we're back. If you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I got you.
All right, sorry about that.
I was
Um,
saying like I discovered this movie from the DVD cover, not even seeing a trailer. Um, and I connected with Charlie right then and there.
yeah. The cover art for this movie is, I think, something that it doesn't like give too much away. Like you said, like if you were to just see it from a cover, I feel like the cover and the movie are telling similar stories, but it's not what you're expecting, you know?
It essentially it's a story about an outsider. That's what it is, and finding his group of friends and where he belongs in this crazy world, despite his own hardships. So, and we'll get to explore that later.
Yeah. And I mean, from the art, we see Emma Watson's character as well, kind of leaning on his shoulder, and that's Sam, along with Ezra Miller as Patrick on the cover. And they're kind of like all happy, but it's not always like that. And I think that that's kind of the story that it tells.
Yeah.
So yeah, Logan Lerman did an amazing job with this character because I always love watching a movie where I can feel a connection, and I felt that connection with Charlie. So
Yep. Me too.
Emma Watson was a face I was not expecting. Like I've never like heard of this as a project for her, which sounds so
Yeah.
horrible.
And what's cool is this is her first movie post Harry Potter.
I have not even seen all the Harry Potter movies. I feel like such
Me
a
neither. I
I
know.
just don't care that much. I'm sorry. And
I know
so
the plot points, but I just haven't.
yeah, I
I'm
know
sorry. I'm sorry.
very
People.
little. I know everyone's probably like hating on us now, but
Yeah.
it's just a fact. Um, this was something that I think in her career, unfortunately, is overlooked because I didn't even know she was in this. But the second I knew that she was in this movie, I was like, oh, it's gonna be good.
She was great.
She
Her
was.
her accent, like, she killed it.
She is. So Sam is Patrick's stepsister. So Patrick, we'll get to him in literally just probably a couple minutes. Uh,
He's an
but
icon. We'll get to him.
yeah, we will get to Patrick. Obviously, there's no way we can't talk about him. But the thing about Sam is that Charlie is falling for her like throughout the course of this movie, but he like is scared of like maybe she's not feeling the same way. And so with this being a high school movie, there always has to be a little bit of a love triangle, and that kind of does happen.
But I feel like this is the best example of one.
Yeah, because it's like he's respecting boundaries, which I feel like things that doesn't always happen, you know?
And they're still friends despite his feelings. Like, that doesn't happen either.
Yeah, I think that Sam was such like an amazing friend. And in the end, it does kind of like blossom, I
Yeah.
guess, which is something that I was almost not sure was going to happen while watching this movie because I kind of saw like how things were going along. Like that was the couple I was rooting for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love them, and I love them together, and well, not together, but like they're glimpses of that, and it's like you just want it so bad for them.
Yeah. And I also like the part in this movie that like really it gets like shocking for me was like when they did like kiss towards the end.
Oh, is that the part where I'm trying to? Cause which one?
Well, it's like I think it's like the first time where he has the flashback.
Oh, the one where it's like where she's like, I want to make sure the first person that kisses you loves you or something. Was that it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That was kind of cute. I do have to.
But she cares about him, and she wants him to have that experience, and she took it upon herself to do that for him, and that's so beautiful.
I I just really love like their friendship too.
Yeah,
Like
I just
even though that are those like feelings, it's still like a friendship down at the core, and that was something I really kind of vibed with, and I felt like it was a connection, like a good true friendship.
yeah, I and it's like you see, and it shows you that even though there's a little bit of an age gap, they're not afraid to include him,
Yeah.
and I feel like that doesn't happen anymore. Like, everything is so segmented now, especially in high school.
For sure. Like, I mean, I really relate to like the whole like friendship like thing because as a freshman, I did have a lot of like senior friends, or even now, like as a junior, most of my friends, if not like all of them, are seniors and they're going to be graduating at the end of the year. So that was like a thing that I like took from this movie was like that connection of like inclusion, but also like their friendship is more than just like a school thing, and like it's kind of like a taken under their wing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's not preachy.
Yeah, it's not very like symbolic. It's more of just friendship.
We're gonna include you. Well, that does happen at the that happens at a point in this movie, but it's beautiful. It's very well done.
Yeah. And I think about this movie is like the whole like college plot, like towards the end where then Sam does go to Penn State. Um, that's it just was something that like it feels really real because I'm like the high schooler who
Because
this is my life.
you and I, you and I were just talking about colleges. Remember the other
Yeah,
day, and you were basically echoing what was going on in this movie. Um,
it's just like I like am living through this like right now is like my school college counselor is like, "Oh, where do you want to go to school? What do you want to do?" And frankly, I don't know.
yeah, it's weird because when I first saw this movie, I was going into my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
The summer, with the summer before senior year, I saw this movie, and now looking back at it, almost 10 years later, it's scary to see how much you know things still resonate here.
Yeah, I would love to like I'm obviously going to revisit this movie probably within the next like couple weeks because I want to go back and rewatch it. But I'd love to see kind of like how it like kind of like with you like you have this connection even so many years after watching it like kind of maybe come back to it and revisit like it down the line and kind of see.
Oh, it when we're done with all this, with all the plot stuff, I'll directly tell you how much it changed my life if you're down with that.
Totally. Let's do it. Honestly, but I think we need to talk about Patrick right now, right
Yes,
here, right now, because Ezra Miller, one, I just amazing. He Fantastic Beasts, Justice League movie. He's going to be in the Flash movie as the Flash.
yeah.
It he great, I feel like iconic actor.
I feel like Patrick is the best representation of an LGBTQ character in a teen film. Period.
I agree, period. Because for me, seeing that representation and kind of seeing that it like wasn't done like it was written like for like 5-year-olds, I think that's what made it like special because I I love when like that stuff is included, but it's just kind of like a thing for me, like kind of like that friendship where it's always kind of just been like welcomed because he has his relationship with like Brad, who is like the high school football star.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just like he Patrick ends up getting beaten up for being gay.
Yeah. What's interesting to point out is the time that this movie was set. This was set in 1992. This movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not too far off, but as far as representation and inclusion for the LGBTQ community, we weren't quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helped a little bit like being taking place in like or not taking place, but like being written in like 2012, 2013, released in that area. I think it was 2012. But like taking place in this time period, like you said, because this is, I don't want to say a period piece, but it is like kind of a period piece.
Yeah.
That was something that was like right in a part of time where like that wasn't always like accepted. And this just like, I think between like Charlie and Patrick, both of them I connected so much with that it just like I felt like I was part of like the movie in a weird way, like seeing like
Yeah.
that, like
Mm-hmm.
parts of me in Charlie,
That's
parts of me in
interesting.
Patrick.
Me too. And you can't say that about a lot of movies where you're in it. You can connect with a character, but when you eat, sleep, and breathe it, you're sort of directly in it. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I think that, and it just felt like a real high school movie. Like it felt real. It didn't feel like it was supposed to be all sunshine and rainbows. It that I think that's what I just liked about it so much. And Patrick, we also have the Rocky Horror Picture Show inclusion in this, which
I love that.
so good. Like, how could we not be obsessed with that?
I was waiting for you. That was the moment I was most excited to talk to you about.
Well, obviously, I am obsessed with the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like, I think pretty much everyone is. It's just such an iconic movie, and I was not expecting the tie-in, but I was so here for it.
Yeah,
And
and it's so good. So good.
it is. And another thing with Patrick that I think was something about this movie that was like really like real, like being a high schooler, is that he like does have a lot of these feelings because like he's in a secret relationship with Brad, who like isn't out. Um, he's on the football team. He's like afraid of what other people might think. Um, Brad's dad ended up like walking in on them. He almost gets beaten up, and it's just like Patrick doesn't really know where to go, and he ends up turning to like drugs and sex, which I never thought I'd say on the podcast, but here we are. And he like is just not coping in a healthy way, and it's like just a lot. I think that it felt like I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like you when you know? Do you feel like when you were younger, or even now, if you saw a character like Patrick, you'd be better off? Like you would feel better about opening up about your identity and things like that because he definitely unlocks that out of people. That
Yeah.
character.
Well, I was actually going to go right where you're going right now, right? Like now. So basically, I don't think I've ever like said it on like the podcast before or like anything. It's just kind of like a part of me. Like, I obviously am not like straight, and like I don't really like labels like at all. So I don't like really know like what to say. But like obviously when I see like a person like me, Patrick, like in a movie or a TV show, it kind of just makes me feel like happy. Or like as a kid, like I was always like scared and worried, like, oh, maybe like this is like wrong, like maybe this is just not right. Like I'd never see any characters like me in like movies. I think that like if I were to have seen this movie like 5 years ago, I think it would have made me like and my realization much more like easy, I
And
guess.
that boils down to two words. Representation matters.
Yeah. I think that even seeing this today, like in 2022, when I have gotten a lot more comfortable like with my identity, that it kind of just made me feel happy. Like I had knew that you had mentioned that there was like LGBTQ representation, but I like just seeing it and like feeling it and like seeing that like Patrick, I feel like me and Patrick are would get along very well. Like
Oh, you are Patrick. I told you that.
yeah, I mean, I just think that it just was so great to like feel that connection. And also it did kind of like I would say created like an emotional connection as well. Like just like seeing what was happening. I'm not gonna lie, I almost did cry.
Yeah, there are some moments with Patrick where he like, he acts like the so together, headstrong person, but when you see him break and be vulnerable, you're just like, oh, I'm with him right now. This is we're together in this.
Yeah, especially the scene that like I think stuck out to me the most was when he was with Brad and Brad's dad had walked in and it didn't obviously go very well. I feel like for me, like even today, like at my school, like I don't really tell a lot of people, like obviously like they can make their own assumptions about it. And I feel like even like still then, like I'm always worried that like maybe something similar might happen where I just might not like be accepted by someone. But I've kind of gotten,
Let's be honest. Society is cruel. It's a valid fear.
yeah, society sucks. That's the message of today's podcast. But it was just like I think for me, like just that connection of just like us just not being straight and
Yeah.
just Patrick living his best life, I think for me was like, I think that was probably my biggest takeaway from this movie, which I think we both have some separate different takeaways, but I think Patrick was probably my biggest
They
takeaway.
all, but one other thing I want to say is that yes, Charlie's the main character, but there is no main character. It's an ensemble movie. Everybody has a fair share, and you don't see that often.
Yeah, I was also gonna say that. Like it, yes, Charlie is probably supposed to be the main character, but for me, I feel like they're all a main character and
They're
their plots are
equal.
all intertwined.
Yeah, they're equal.
Yeah,
I
it
love it.
it was an emotional ride. So now that we're done with super emotional stuff where I'm like about to cry, we can move on. Paul Rudd is in this movie.
I love his character in this. I just, because everybody has that teacher that shapes them and basically comes in their life when they really need it. And Paul Rudd's character is just a brilliant addition. And to think that I think he only shot 2 days on this movie. Look at all they got done in 2 days.
Yeah, and Paul Rudd is not someone I really expected to like be like in this movie. One, two, I also
I feel like that's a theme for you.
yeah, with pretty much every single person as we go down the line. But to have him be such an emotional, like connected character,
He's an anchor for Charlie, I feel.
yeah, like an he's like someone he can confide in, and that was I think probably one of my favorite parts.
Everybody has a teacher like that. I know I do. I don't know.
I definitely do too. I my grade school teacher, Mrs. Newman, or my middle school teacher, Mrs. Newman, who was actually on the podcast way back when I started. She I would say that she was probably my teacher, and just like always having that person where you can like have those conversations and kind of have that like connection and that friendship is something
Yeah,
so important.
like I have multiple teachers, but the one that really connects with me is my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Black. Now we were his first ever class, his first year of teaching, so everybody was learning together. And when I graduated high school, he actually showed up to my graduation party and surprised me. So that was pretty cool to see him after pretty much 8 years or so. So everybody has that teacher that just impacts them.
Yeah, I that's a great story. One that was really cute. But two, I think just having all of these characters have their own storyline with their own people and their own like life crisis, if you will. I hate to say life crisis, but I feel like they're all having their own life crisis.
Yeah. As a teenager, you don't know who you are yet as much as you think you do.
And I think I remember this from when I was performing this past holiday season. Went out on the very like it was like the first or second day we all had this meeting, the entire entertainment department. And one of their biggest things was like you never know what someone else is going through outside of here. And so this applies to literally any situation. School, you don't know what people are going through outside of school. You don't know what people are going through outside of a classroom or an activity. Or honestly, none of you guys probably really know what's going on outside of this podcast. But like that's kind of just people living their lives. And I think that this movie does such a great job with that.
Yeah, it's it. I feel like one of the side characters really technically it's not even a character, it's a concept, and one of the side characters in this movie I feel is empathy, being empathetic for other people.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that we as a society could do so much better with doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. I'm
Yeah.
so
I
happy.
also love this next character because we have Nina Dobrev.
Oh yes, we do.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to be honest. She is from the Vampire Diaries, and I am still trying to get through the Vampire Diaries. I can't watch it. I really can't. But I love Nina Dobrev so much that I have suffered through the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, I have to. I have to give her credit for her part in this movie. She is the most caring, one of the most caring siblings I've seen in a film ever.
I was going to agree. I think her character, something, I hate to say this because I've said it for like everyone, something about her character just clicked for me. Like, I don't know if it was just overall that Charlie just needed another person in his life to like be there for him, but it just I'm gonna cry just thinking about it because I just feel like having that person in your life just makes it so much easier, and having that connection with your sister because she's going through a lot on her own.
Yeah, I mean, her boyfriend is like low key abusing her. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say like like the first scene where we really like see it come
oh,
out
the
is like the
slap.
slap, which
Mm,
kind of, not gonna lie, did like make me a little uncomfortable. And
no,
then
yeah, that.
going through along the line, like throughout this movie, it was a lot.
Do you notice how? I don't know if you notice this, but after a serious scene, there's always a laugh, or there's always something positive to break it up.
I didn't notice it, but now looking back, I see it. And I'm kind of glad because I think we all needed some emotional like
No,
relief
and
in this movie.
whenever there were, but you know, that being said, this is not a depressing film. Like, it's just an emotional roller coaster, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say like an emotional roller coaster, like an emotional, like very vulnerable emotional kind of thing. Because
Yeah,
it's just like if you have those connections, like it makes a stronger feeling for you. Like honestly, I could go into this like not being the person I am today and watch this movie and get absolutely nothing out of it. But because I have those connections with the characters, I think it creates an even new level.
do you feel like okay? Do you feel like you needed to see this?
Yes.
Do you feel like this film was made for you in a way? Like, do you feel like, cause when I first saw it, I took ownership of it.
Yeah.
This was mine. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I
it was your movie. Like I feel like I totally feel that. And like I feel like yes, I feel like this was a movie that honestly I'm kind of glad I waited to watch so long because I feel like there's a chance if I would have watched this another time in my life, I wouldn't have had the same connections.
yeah, and it was. I'll tell you a quick story. So the summer, I mean the school year after I watched it, my English teacher decided to do a perk unit in class. And I'm like freaking out because, you know, I had just become obsessed with this film. And we're watching this movie, and all the all the kids are laughing at all of the like the sexual things and the the more serious stuff, and I'm just like, come on, you're ruining it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
I feel like that was definitely an interesting choice to do as a unit in high school.
I felt like, and I'll be honest, when they were doing all that stuff, I got upset because
Yeah,
it's
no,
like,
I would too.
cause you're like you're ruining the experience, and that's what this movie is, an experience.
Yeah, no, it's an emotional experience and an emotional roller coaster all in one.
It can needed one for
Yeah.
sure though. But
Let's see. Um, is there any character? I mean, there's a character named Bob.
yeah, he don't do much. He
Yeah, I was
doesn't.
gonna say he's there.
He I he gave Charlie the brownie.
I mean, that's an interesting plot point.
Yeah, that was a moment.
Yeah.
um, but but again, what actually one character I did want to bring up is, you know, everybody in high school tries to have their first relationship, and sometimes it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
What do we think about Mary Elizabeth?
Okay. Here we go. I did not like her.
All right, yeah.
I don't want to say I hated her because I did kind of see like where she was coming from, you know. But I get the whole like I'm in high school right now. This is literally what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. People being like, I am not gonna date anyone in high school. I'm not, no one loves me. No one, if I don't date in high school, no one's ever gonna love me. Like it's a lot, you know?
And then when she was on the phone and wouldn't stop talking, you're like, come on.
Yeah, I did not enjoy her as a person in this movie. However, I am willing to look past that plot because it made up in other areas of the movie.
Yeah, I I felt so bad for him because he wanted to feel something so bad and he was forcing it.
Yeah, he wanted that relationship. He wanted that first out of the way, but was it really, really worth it, you know?
Yeah. But I think all in all, he wanted Sam.
I mean, obviously he wanted Sam. I feel like it was a super like I feel like Sam was such a better fit for him.
You I think, and one of the themes that we didn't talk about is that I try not to bring disability too much into this, but it applies here. And when you're the slightest bit different, you're considered an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
Whether if you're a little more flamboyant, if you're a little more geeky, if you're a little more nerdy, you're gonna be targeted.
Yeah.
But when Sam and Patrick invite Charlie into that group at the within the first act of the movie, That inclusion at its core.
For sure. I feel like having that, like, oh, because I've been there, done that, like where people like outcast me, like because many different reasons. And I feel like even in high school today, like I think I've told the story on the podcast before, but if not, I'll give you a brief summary. We basically had this like freshman like get together thing on before the first day of school. So it was before I was even officially in high school technically. And I didn't really know too many people at this school. And we had this lunch and we all sat down for pizza or whatever it was. And everyone sat down and I didn't have a spot to sit. I was the only one who didn't have a spot to sit because no one wanted me to sit at their table.
Oh.
And it sounds so depressing now, but it gets better. So I'm going to tell you the story. I ended up meeting one of my best friends because they asked me to sit at their table because I didn't have a spot to sit.
Oh. So so you're Charlie and you found your Sam and Patrick at the football game.
Yeah, really. That's how I felt. And some of the people that I sat down at that table are some of the people I've been closest with my entire high school like years. And so it's a sad story at first, but see, it did have a good ending, I promise.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it did. And you you need that core group of friends to get you through things.
Yeah, I mean, every like I hate like high school cliques and all that, but like I feel like having that group where you really connect with the people in it, those are all the friends that you need.
There's a difference between a clique and a core group.
Yeah. It
Cause
you can have your groups, but I think that it was
because you have your people. They're your bodyguard, so to speak.
yeah, they're your I hate to use the term besties, but I feel like it applies. Like
It
they're
to-
your
it
besties.
it totally does. Totally.
Well, I think that it is time to talk about the plot of this movie because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there is.
Starting off with um we have Charlie. He's not very excited because it's his freshman year of high school. He doesn't really have too many friends. He has a he's just very shy, kind of closed off at the beginning of this movie. He's not really, I think, open to a lot of things happening in his life. I think he's kind of just riding down low.
Cause didn't he just like we said, didn't he just like lose his best friend? Cause
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if he just lost the best friend, but we did get a little glimpse of that. So he's
Yeah.
just very closed off, which I think is okay, I think, for him at the beginning. He ends up coming across Sam and Patrick um at the football game, and then he ends up going to a party. Classic
Yeah.
high school plot.
But then they realize that like, cause Sam starts talking to him, and he's like, "Okay, we need to include him," and then they just go, "Cheers to Charlie," and they all just form this pact.
Yeah. It was so I don't want to say cute because it's like it should just be like a regular occurrence of making
I
friends.
tear up every time.
Yeah, no, just thinking about it, I am a little like tear up. He also gets a weed brownie.
Poor Charlie. He's like, "Can you make me a milkshake?" Like that whole thing.
That
with
was
Sam.
funny. That was good. So then when he's high, he tells Sam that his friend, this is when we hear that his friend like had committed suicide.
Mhm.
And so
And more of that is in the book.
oh, okay.
Yeah, there's explanations and stuff.
So I'll definitely I think I kind of do want to check the book out though, then like get some more background information. Probably cry while reading it, the good
Yep.
stuff. So at this party, he walks in on Patrick and Brad, who is the high school quarterback, making out, doing all that good teenager stuff.
That business, yeah.
That business. And so Patrick's like, Brad is closeted. So Charlie obviously is going to keep it a secret because that's just the kind of respectful thing to do if a person isn't out. And so Sam kind of like realizes that Charlie doesn't really have anyone else. And they kind of just bring him right into the group. And I think that's such a cute little friendship moment.
It is.
And so it just kind of gets exciting. I like the little like pit tunnel thing.
Oh, yeah, I love the tunnel.
Very cinematically pleasing, if you will.
That's so symbolic. Like that's one of my favorite images in film history. Like that is just perfect.
Yeah, it was great. I love that scene. Honestly, that whole party scene in that evening was just great for me. That was amazing. We get to see a little bit more of Sam. She's working to improve her SAT scores, which is funny because I'm taking SAT pretty soon, which is so scary.
I love that side plot. How he's helping her and how it all comes together. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it was also another plot point that I needed to see right now because I'm taking the SAT in like a month or two.
And it's not like I chose this movie on purpose, but I'm glad I could connect with you in so many ways.
For sure. And so we kind of have this cute little Christmas scene. I actually loved it.
Wait, is this the exchange? Yeah.
Yes, this is the exchange.
Okay. Can I talk about the line?
Yes, talk about it. Open up. Tell us your true thoughts.
So, there's iconic lines of dialogue within this movie. Like, we accept the love we think we deserve, that Paul Rudd's character says, and, welcome to the island of misfit. But there's one line to me that doesn't make sense, but at the same time, I laugh every time. So, Patrick just says, Mary Elizabeth, why are you trying to eat Christmas? Like, what does that even mean?
I still don't know what it means.
But I love it. Like, it makes no damn sense, but I love it.
No, I think it is so like comedically like funny because it doesn't make any sense.
And it's Patrick.
It's always Patrick,
Mm-hmm.
we love to see it. We really do. This is also the scene where Charlie's like, I've never been kissed. Which is interesting.
This was okay. So this was emotional for me when I first saw it because I had just gotten out of my first terrible breakup, like in between junior and senior year, and that's when I first saw this movie, and you would think something like that would like trigger me in a way, but it didn't because it's all about finding the person that accepts you and who you deserve to be with, and it really guided me along, and I'll get more into detail as I tell my story a little later.
Yeah. And I think that this is the cute little scene where Sam is like, I want your first kiss to be from someone who loves you. And then
that is so like, that's not only cute, but that's like really like wise of her.
Yeah.
Like to think of him first because she knows that he's been through the ringer.
It was just
already.
so cute. I'm sorry. I shipped them so hard at this point already.
And she wasn't looking too bad in this movie. So I totally.
Yeah, it was such a cute moment. And this is where it gets really good because we have the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Mhm.
Charlie fills in for Sam's boyfriend.
Were you expecting that?
I was not, honestly.
Cause they alluded to Rocky Horror before, but like when you saw that, were you like, oh, like
It was
this is gonna.
unexpected, but if I said I wasn't excited about it, I'd be lying.
I was hyped. I love it.
And I also really like this little next party scene. Oh, I we forgot to talk about Mary Elizabeth asking Charlie to the dance, but
Uh,
are we really missing anything?
uh, there's another scene I want to talk to you about with her, but it's the scene they where they're on the way to the dance and the dad goes, Charlie told me you're a Buddhist. It's like what?
That was funny, and I don't know if it like was meant to be funny, but I
It's the delivery. It's like, oh my god.
it was really good. Um, this I also we go through like the whole Mary Elizabeth like obsession thing. However, Patrick is kind of like stay away from the group for a little bit. However, that leads to some depression, which is obviously a very like part of this movie that like is a real, very real thing. And we
Yeah.
have some more Aunt Helen flashbacks, which
Oh, that's a whole thing in itself.
I really kind of thought that that was an interesting add-in, but I liked it.
Everybody has that trauma at some point. Something happened to them that made them who they are.
And that was his thing.
Yeah, good or bad. And obviously, this was bad and challenging, and it messed him up forever. And, but, you know, I'm glad that they didn't shy away from those moments. I'm so glad.
That was like I think the thing about this movie, it was real. It didn't play it safe, you know.
No, never did. And this this film is, I feel like it's required viewing for people that are struggling, for people that don't have their purpose in life, for people that are different, and people that just need to know that they need to exist in this world even though they don't feel like they should.
Yeah. No, that I think that was a perfect way to put it. Not gonna lie, this next part was a lot for me. And I feel like talking
Oh,
about it is definitely gonna be interesting, but we're gonna do it anyways. The next day, I'm actually not sure if it's the next day, but at some point along the line, Brad comes back to school, and he's
oh,
all beaten up, because he was caught, doing that teenage stuff with Patrick. Um, he's like, oh, I was, jumped. However, he kind of like distances from Patrick. And then Patrick gets like kicked or tripped by one of the friends of Brad. He gets called obviously a slur, which I'm not going to say because I don't feel comfortable saying that. But it's just kind of a lot. Like I think this scene was probably like the most like emotional one for me, which is I think is a really interesting.
and a little side note, this was the scene that people were laughing at when we watched it in the class.
Oh, of course it was, because high schoolers are horrible.
And I'm just sitting there like, can you like not?
Yeah.
Like
I don't know if I would be able to contain myself if the kids in my school were doing that,
I
if we were
left.
to watch this movie. Good for you.
I said I need a minute, and I left because like there, you know, one of the things that I want to bring up is that when I meet somebody and I want them to get to know me, I show them this movie because I feel like it's the best representation of me. And when people start to laugh or make jokes, I'm like, okay, can you like not do that, because this is something that means so much to me. Like, we can laugh at the funny part, but if you're laughing at a serious scene, I don't want you here.
Period. That's what I would say, because I wouldn't be able to contain that.
And yeah, but that fight, oh, that fight. And then when Charlie says, don't touch my friend, or I'll blind you."
Oh
It's
yeah.
like, it's like, whoa, okay, yeah, um, yeah, that's. But again, they didn't glamify that fight. It was real as real could get.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. Just felt right. It felt real, and that's obviously something important. But it does get better. Charlie intervenes. He does end up blacking out, which is he's trying his best. It's just kind of a lot. And you're right, the blind him thing, and it's just I think they become friends again, and it just is a lot. This next part I was not expecting is when Patrick kisses Charlie.
Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes you need to express love towards people in so many different ways, and I feel like, again, this was so real. I'm trying not to curse on this podcast, but it was so real that I just, this scene is forever ingrained in my memory.
Yeah.
The best representation ever for this audience. Up until Love, Simon, this was the gold standard for me.
Yeah, Love, Simon is another amazing movie.
This was the gold standard. It's, yeah, but that scene is so important in so many different ways.
Yeah. I loved it. I That was one of my favorite scenes. Unexpected, but I loved it.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't we didn't talk about the living room routine at the dance where they included Charlie.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That's important
Well, take it away then.
because he's at this dance and he knows nobody, and like Patrick and Sam call him out to the dance floor, and he's very shy at first, kind of like slowly walking to, but then he just gets into it, and then they become real good friends, and you really see this bond form in front of our eyes.
I think that the bonds and the friendships of this movie are what make it so strong.
Yeah, and I feel like that I gotta give credit to the director, Steven Chbosky. When they were choreographing that scene, they basically said to them, "Okay, we're gonna leave the room. You come up with a dance. You have an hour. Let's do it." So they just bonded and did the so like they really got to bond and create this together. This wasn't a dance class. This was real. So everything about this movie was real.
Yeah. And I think that's just what made it, you know.
Yeah.
Um Up next is the kind of like kind of building up to like the ending where Sam and Charlie do kiss. And then there's like the thigh touch, which brings back another
Oh,
flashback.
yeah.
Then they like end up continuing to kiss. And this was like, I think, when it just got a lot in not a like a bad way, but it was just like this was like when it got like emotional. Like, you know, Sam ended up leaving for college. Charlie just didn't have a great like mental state.
Because Charlie didn't know what to do. Everything went away from him in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So he's already not in a good mental state. These friends were his anchor. So then on the day of graduation, he basically loses control for the second time. Because the first time it happens, it's in the snow. He's making the snow angel.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like this scene where he's like, um, he calls his sister on the. Remember, he calls his sister on the phone.
Uh-huh.
How did you feel about that?
I I thought it was like a cute sibling moment.
But then he hangs up the phone and she doesn't know what to do.
And then she realizes that obviously he's in not in a good place. Um
So then I think it cuts to him in the hospital.
yeah, I think you're
Yeah,
right.
right.
And then
Yeah, it does.
they talk about I wrote this down because I wanted to make sure that I said the correct term, which was dissociative amnesia. They talk about that, the doctor, and that his
Okay.
aunt had sexually abused him, which was kind of, I think, always, I don't want to say implied, but it was like something that was like hinted at, foreshadowed with the flashbacks.
Yeah, and I like having him, having Charlie have a good relationship with his therapist got me too.
For sure.
Cause most people hate. Well, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people strongly dislike their therapist because they're not understood or they're not value or they don't value them or whatever. But seeing this healthy relationship really kind of warmed my heart.
Yeah.
So then at the end of the film, he gets home from the hospital and um Patrick and Cam say, "Does Charlie want to come out and play?" And then they reprise that tunnel scene moment.
That was, I think, the best ending.
And You can hear me getting emotional as I'm talking.
Well, it's an emotional ending. Like I was almost crying at the end.
It's the perfect bow to wrap it up. It really is. And if I could go really deep here, like
You can do whatever you want.
when I went through this first breakup, when I first saw this movie, I told people that I didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw this movie and I felt like I was Charlie. And I still had a lot of love to give and a lot of friendships to make and a lot of stories to tell. So this movie, as much as I watch it, everybody knows that this movie is mine. I take ownership of this. I I whenever I'm sad, I just watch it just because it's so comforting for me just to know that it's there. So that is why when I asked you if you wanted to cover this movie, I was scared to do it because I've never really talked about my deep connection to it. And I'm so glad that I had this platform today to like finally let that stuff out because earlier late um like in 2021 I was in a relationship that I thought was going well and I was thinking of like going towards the next step and it just ended and I even with that person I showed them this movie because it was a part of me and if you're my friend and you're in my life you need to see this movie to get a better glimpse of what I go through day to day. So when I saw this film and every time I see it with someone, it's not because it's a good movie. It's not because it's a brilliantly shot movie, which it is. It's all those things, but it's the best representation of me ever. And I want people to get to know the real me, so I show them this.
Yeah. Well, thank you obviously so much for like opening up. And I think that this movie is the movie of opening up. Like obviously there was stuff said on this podcast that I didn't ever think I'd probably say on the podcast and feelings and emotions and I honestly did cry while recording this podcast. So I think that everyone who's listening, I feel like one, if you have not seen this movie and you're still listening, why? But two, I'm hoping that you have those same connections and those same moments that made this movie special for you. And we appreciate you all listening and taking and having like these hard conversations like that
They're needed
they're needed and it's just I think a thing that we all just really
because so many people shy away from these conversations. And if I could just, I'm gonna just say something here. I'm gonna say to you what I needed to hear back then. And if you're listening to this and you're watching this movie or you're listening to this and you're feeling alone or upset or sad or not one of the group, like um we we love you. You are enough, and you have to keep going. Because that's what I did. And everything's not perfect, but it's there. And I'm here, and I'm so glad to have been here today, too.
Yeah. I think that it was just the conversations and what I needed in today in 2022. And I think what you needed then, I think it's what you need today. And I think it's what I'll need in the future.
I feel like one day you and I should just watch it together
Yeah,
somehow. We'll figure it out.
we
But
will.
I know this is a departure for you a little bit, so I thank you for expanding your horizons just a little bit deeper than you normally would. And again, this was the perfect vehicle for me to discuss this movie that means the absolute world to me. So, thank you.
Thank you. Before I end the episode, where can people go check out and support your platform and your podcast and all that good stuff?
Well, you can find me at www.djbobshow.com. You can find me on Facebook. Just search The DJ Bob Show. Twitter at The DJ Bob Show. And Instagram at DJ Bob Show Podcast. I'm there. We've got so many great interviews coming up and so many in the archives for you to check out. And I'm not going anywhere. So you're stuck with me.
I mean, is that really the worst problem that they could have, being stuck with you?
Well, you can answer that because you kind of work with me too.
Well, I think that this was a great episode, just like all of the other ones, and I look forward to whatever we talk about next, because I always appreciate it.
I'm not even gonna say I hope it's happier because this is so needed.
I mean, depending on which way you look at this movie, it could be happy.
And it's very, like, I feel like it's, there is a silver lining at this movie, and it's that you find the group of people that care for you, and that's the note I want to leave it with, so.
Yeah. Thank you everyone so much for listening. I hope everyone had those takeaway moments from this episode and this movie. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all the places at That's So Matthew. Make sure to check out my website, that'smatthew.com, for all the fun stuff on there. And I post new episodes every single Friday, so tune back in again next week. Bye.
Bye.